Hey, I'm Selena, and everyone in my school knew me as the head cheerleader. But I saw myself more as a science geek because I loved doing homework with my best friend Sarah after school. But one day, Brad came to our table and asked Sarah, "Hey, have you done my homework yet?" Sarah started giggling and said, "Sure, here it is." And Brad said, "Thanks, you're the best." I asked her, "What just happened?" And Sarah told me she'd done Brad's homework because he was so cute and handsome. For some reason, that really bothered me. Brad was the biggest jerk in our school, and I knew he was only using my friend Sarah. He wasn't interested in dating her or anything. When he came back to our table the next day and asked Sarah for more homework, I told him to go away. But Sarah said, "No, it's okay. Here's your homework, Brad." Before he could take it, I grabbed it, ripped it into 4 pieces, and poured water over it. What happened next was crazy. We were in the middle of the cafeteria, and he screamed, "Hey everybody, look, Selena is wet!" And then he took a glass of water and poured it all over me. I was furious, but with everyone staring at me, I was too shy to say or do anything back. A lot of people started laughing. I was so angry I wanted to rip his head off. But before I could find a knife, one of our teachers took us aside and asked what happened. Brad told her I had ripped his homework up and he just took revenge. Of course, I tried to explain how he was exploiting my friend by making her do his homework, but the stupid teacher gave both of us detention. Ugh. Now I had to sit next to this jerk for 2 hours, literally right next to him. He kept staring at me, and then he said, "We should go on a date. You are pretty cute." I told him, "In your dreams," because everyone in our school knew he was a bad boy. He'd had at least 4 girlfriends in the last 2 years. He was also in a relatively successful band, which meant that he had lots of girls chasing after him. There was no way his charm would work on me after he embarrassed me in front of my whole school. But the next weekend, he came by my house with roses. It was so cringeworthy. And when I opened the door, my dad was right next to me. It was so embarrassing. And my dad asked Brad, "Who the hell are you?" And Brad responded, "I'm Selena's future boyfriend." And then he laid down the roses and walked away. Oh gosh, there was no way this would work on me. He had even attached a card saying, "I'm sorry for what I've done. I know sometimes I act stupid, but I want to change for you." I threw the roses into the trash. But for some reason, I couldn't get Brad out of my head. I mean, I had to admit that he was somehow cute and charming, even though I knew he was only playing with me. There was no way he wanted a serious relationship. But for the next weeks, he kept on trying, always asking me how I was doing and if I wanted to go out with him. His confidence was kind of attractive. And finally, I gave in and agreed on a date. I thought maybe he'd been a bad boy in the past, but with my help, he could turn into a nice and good guy. Yes, stupid me really believed that. Until I received a message one day. All it said was, "He has a kid." What? Who has a kid? Was the person talking about my boyfriend? I tried to call the number and texted back, "What do you mean?" But I never got a response. I didn't want to believe it and asked Brad about it. But he said it was just one of his jealous ex-girlfriends trying to break us up. Wow, that was kinda romantic. I liked the fact that other girls were trying to get him back, but he chose to stay with me. But then he casually mentioned that his ex was still hanging out with him all the time. They were often jamming and making music. I told him I wanted to see her, so he invited me to one of their private jam sessions. I was shocked to see how gorgeous she was. And I was crazy jealous when they jammed and sang together for like an hour. I felt like the third wheel. He told me they'd broken up because they weren't a fit. But I was so insecure afterward that I started stalking my boyfriend whenever I could. I'd borrow my dad's car, wait in front of his house, and follow him wherever he went. And guess what? He went to another girl's house. But not just some random girl. No, he went to my nerdy friend's house. I was shocked. I mean, was she still doing his homework? Why hadn't she told me about it? I mean, I was his girlfriend, and I was her best friend. Something was wrong. So I went to her house to look through the window, trying to figure out what they were doing. But they were just sitting on the couch watching a movie. It was so strange. I went back home, and when my boyfriend came by, I confronted him. I told him to show me his phone and tell me if he had met any other girls. He gave it to me gladly, but there was no messages or calls to my best friend. The next school day, I went to Sarah and asked her, "Hey, how are you? How was your weekend?" She said it was pretty boring. Uh-huh, sure. Next, I took her phone. She said, "Hey, give it back!" But I had every right to take it, because she should have told me she was meeting my boyfriend behind my back. Luckily, I knew her password, and there was a chat with someone called Paul, but it was actually my boyfriend. I knew that because it was his number, and in their chat, she had used hearts several times. I asked her why she was meeting my boyfriend behind my back, but she said she was only doing his homework. Of course, I knew she was lying. She wanted to steal my boyfriend from me. That day, I broke up with both of them. My boyfriend didn't even care. He just said, "Okay." Now I know that dishonest jerks don't change. He had only pretended to be a good guy to get into bed with me. Fine. Lesson learned.
I want to tell you why I was eating myself to death. It all started when I was a kid. I don't think anyone ever loved me. My classmates certainly did not. They enjoyed making fun of my big glasses and said I was a creepy nerd. And when I got home, my mom would treat me even worse. She always told me I was the reason my dad had left us. But in all that chaos, I had one thing that made me feel good, and that was food. Whenever I put that chocolate in my mouth, all my worries were gone for a while. That's how my addiction started. I ate so much that by the time I was 15, I weighed 300 pounds. After I dropped out of high school, I moved into my grandmother's trailer. I'm ashamed to admit this, but she had to take care of me. At one point, I couldn't even stand up and go to the bathroom anymore. So how did I go to toilet? Well, I didn't. I just stayed on the bed while my grandma took care of the rest. Of course, I felt ashamed of myself. I sometimes checked the Facebook profiles of my former classmates and saw them study at good universities or do well in their jobs. Meanwhile, I couldn't even stand up and leave my bed. At that point, I was weighing 600 pounds. I often got angry thinking about all the opportunities I had missed. During primary school, many teachers had told me I was gifted. And I always had gotten straight A's in all my math and physics classes without ever learning. I could have probably gotten a job at a tech company like Google or Microsoft, but instead of making a six-figure salary, I was living on my grandma's bed. One day, my mom came into the trailer and started making fun of me. She said, "Oh, my big fat boy, I see you are still growing bigger and bigger." She was laughing, and I got so mad. I wanted to grab and strangle her, but I was too fat to move. That day, I called an ambulance and told them to take me to a hospital. They first had to cut the trailer open because I didn't fit through the door. And at the hospital, I told the doctors I wanted a gastric bypass, which is a surgery that makes my stomach smaller so I can only eat small food portions. Luckily, the surgery went well, and within just 2 years, I had reached my dream weight. Suddenly, life was so much better. I could walk into grocery stores without people looking at me with disgust. And I even started online dating, where I found my first girlfriend. But not everything was good. After I got a job at McDonald's, I was immediately fired because I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I think I was depressed, and that's why I continued living on my grandma's bed. Sometimes my girlfriend came over, but it wasn't a romantic relationship. I think she only met up with me to tell me I was a loser. She enjoyed making me feel bad and used me as her punching bag. One time I asked her if she wanted to kiss me, but she responded, "Nah, maybe you've lost weight, but I still think you are ugly." But despite my crazy girlfriend, I enrolled myself at an online college, and that was the best thing I ever did. After 2 years of studying, I got a small job at a software company. I told the HR that I was kind of lazy and wouldn't work more than 4 hours a day, but they said that's fine. Of course, I have a much lower salary than my coworkers, but it's still enough to rent a small apartment. And I also broke up with my crazy girlfriend. Did I tell you that she had made it her mission to turn me fat again, and whenever she was at my place, she would place small bits of chocolate right in front of me? It was hard to resist them, but I succeeded. However, my so-called girlfriend wasn't happy about that and tied me up to a chair so I couldn't move anymore. Then she forced me to eat several chocolate bars. But because of my gastric bypass and my small stomach, I ended up puking it out again, all onto her. She freaked out and ran outside. And then it took me 5 hours to free myself from the ropes. But afterward, I finally had the self-esteem to break up with her over SMS. I'm still lazy and an overall mess, but my life is so much better than it was 4 years ago.
Hey, I'm Selena, and everyone in my school knew me as the head cheerleader. But I saw myself more as a science geek because I loved doing homework with my best friend Sarah after school. But one day, Brad came to our table and asked Sarah, "Hey, have you done my homework yet?" Sarah started giggling and said, "Sure, here it is." And Brad said, "Thanks, you're the best." I asked her, "What just happened?" And Sarah told me she'd done Brad's homework because he was so cute and handsome.